India has agreed to zero duty or reduced duty access for a limited set of American farm products under the interim India-US trade deal. These include dried distillers grains, red sorghum, soybean oil, and some fruits and nuts. The government says sensitive sectors remain protected, but many of these products come from US supply chains where genetically modified or GM crops dominate. India has long been cautious about GM crops, approving only one variety for domestic use so far. So what are GM crops and why does India remain wary of them? Let's break it down. Genetically modified crops are plants whose DNA is altered using modern biotechnology. The goal is to protect crops from pests, weeds, or climate stress. This differs from traditional Indian breeding, which improves crops by crossing varieties over generations. The World Health Organization says GM foods available globally are not likely to pose health risks, but safety is assessed case by case and each country sets its own rules. The US is one of the world's largest GM crop producers. According to the US Department of Agriculture, over 90% of corn, upland cotton, and soybeans grown there are genetically engineered. US farm products are built around corn and soybeans. So even when the final product isn't a GM grain, the supply chain often is. India has not allowed direct imports of US corn or soybeans. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says sensitive sectors such as agriculture and dairy remain protected, but some zero-duty items, especially dried distillers grains, are typically made from US corn, which is mostly GM. That's the grey area. India's resistance comes down to regulation, farmers, and risk. India follows a precautionary biosafety framework. Every genetically engineered organism needs domestic approval. At present, only BT cotton, a non-food crop, is approved for commercial use. GM food crops such as BT brinjal and GM mustard have been developed and tested, but none has clearance for unrestricted cultivation. Indian agriculture supports millions of small farmers. Cheaper imports from highly mechanized US farms could hurt prices and rural livelihoods. There are environmental concerns too. India is a center of crop diversity, and regulators worry about gene flow and biodiversity loss. Separating GM and non-GM products in global trade is also difficult and costly. With over 90% of US corn and soybeans genetically engineered, enforcement becomes challenging. That's why even animal feed and processed inputs raise alarms. Farmer groups have warned of a backdoor entry for GM products. The Bharatiya Kisan Sangh opposes such imports in any form. The Sanyukta Kisan Morcha says duty-free imports could hurt Indian farmers. Even Congress leader Jairam Ramesh has questioned how open-ended the deal really is. The government says India's GM policy hasn't changed. But as trade talks deepen, the line between processed imports and GM-linked supply chains will face closer scrutiny. And that's why GM crops remain a sensitive issue in the India-US trade deal. Follow Business Standard for more explainers.